Hi, I'm Austin Davis, and we're live with Live at 525, a little bit after 525. I'm the Director of Government Affairs with the Lake Champlain Chamber, which is a nonprofit chamber of commerce that represents employers in the greater Burlington area. And this week, joining me is Mayor Moreau Weinberg, and I asked him on the show today to talk a little bit about some of his policy proposals around public safety in Burlington, which the Lake Champlain Chamber Board formally endorsed recently. The Chamber had a small working group on proposals, and they closely aligned with many of what the mayor had set forth, and we made the decision to, rather than add something new to the environment, to in fact just endorse something that's already in existence, and that was our pleasure. So thank you for joining me, Mr. Mayor, and look forward to chatting with you a little bit about some of these. I guess
Great.
Set the stage for me. I mean, I think you've done a lot of work over the last decade around public safety, modernizing policing, and really, in a lot of ways, we're ahead of the curve and the times in this subject. I guess set the stage a little bit for me here about the background on some of these.
Yeah, great. I'm happy to do that. And Austin, thanks for having me on the show. And I don't know that if I remember over the last 11 years a time when the chamber took an action quite like this and endorsed a plan. Obviously we've worked closely together on many things, but I appreciate the proactive step that the chamber took at a really important time when we're in a lot of ways grappling with public safety issues that we haven't had to face in the past, and I appreciate the chamber stepping up and taking a stand on some issues, including on issues within this that there's some controversy around. But yeah, let's go back because you're right. First of all, Burlington has a 150-year-old police department. I mean, the police department is almost as old as the city itself, and in recent decades, we've been fortunate to have really strong leadership, I think, at the department, almost without, maybe without exception for decades now. And part of that strong leadership has been focused on, obviously what you think of traditionally of public safety issues, keeping crime levels low, but there's always been, I think, a strong commitment to progressive policing principles in Burlington. I say always, but for in recent years there has been. Certainly, I will say, I came into office in 2012, and I came in as someone who had frankly, not so much exposure to public safety issues before running for mayor. I ran on financial issues. I ran committing to get some of the municipal projects that we had that were stuck installed, getting them moving. I ran on housing issues. But in my first few years as mayor, it became clear to me that as much as we had a very strong police department, we were not immune to these larger real concerns about American policing. We had a protest that went bad. The police reaction to it, the police managing of it was problematic in 2012. We had an officer involved shooting of someone and death of someone suffering from a mental health episode, and that's actually happened twice in the time that I've been mayor. And so by 2015, when President Obama came out with what he called it was a roadmap, it was a plan for 21st century policing. It was really, I thought, quite compelling, and a lot of what we have done in the years since has been grounded in that document and the principles of that document. So some examples of what I'm talking about, we've been committed to building trust and transparency. A great example of that is the body camera policy that the city has had. We were one of the first departments in New England to put body cameras on all of its officers. I think something that I don't even think today the state police have body cameras on all officers. I could be, maybe I'm not quite up to date on that. They have cruisers that have cameras. That's a little different, but we very early made that commitment, and we continue to refine how that works. We just recently hired a redaction specialist that's allowing us to put out video of many use of force incidents quite quickly after they happen now redacted so that important information is protected, but we're committed to that level of transparency. And you see that in having a transparency portal with a lot of data. You see that in an annual report that we put out every year that is a very extensive statistical report. So, that's one area.
Yeah.
Since you want to, where else you want to focus on?
And then, so moving forward, I mean, I think all these things happened, and then, we had the pandemic, and I think across the country, we saw a lot of downtowns kind of see some troubling trends. And I don't think Burlington's unique in this sense, and I don't think that Burlington is immune from what we're kind of seeing across the country, but there has been some startling changes in downtowns across the country that we have experienced as well. And one of those is just an increased use of firearms within the city. And I understand, one of the top proposals in your public safety policy is around a task force on gun violence prevention. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, or share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So you're right, Austin. Since the pandemic and in 2020 and the years after years of declining levels of homicides and violent crimes in general, the country saw a real change in direction and a real spike in gun crimes nationally. And homicides. Burlington definitely experienced that in 2022. There was also a rise in property crimes, and so what has been happening in Burlington is not unique. I do think it's going to take action at the local level to turn it around, and we have been acting on a number of fronts. I'm proud of the work the police department has done to try to hold shooters who have perpetrated these crimes accountable. Over 80% of the shootings over the last 3 years we now have had, the police have made arrests in, and it does seem, every time I say this, I kind of want to knock on wood, but it does seem there's been a slowing in the levels of shooting that we saw last spring and summer. As we got into the fall, it slowed down. Another area, however, though, that where I think we need to take further action is combined with the work on the enforcement side. I created this task force and put Kim Carson, our new director of the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Department, in charge of it to really try to, first of all, help us understand what is happening here, this dramatic increase in crimes. There's been some public discussion on what seems to be driving parts of it, but really it was a variety of causes that I think have not been sort of fully understood and grappled with. I do think we have to ask ourselves whether there are some gaps in the way we work with youth, with our teens, that maybe could be filled in, and that could help us find kids who are having a hard time, make sure they understand they're valued members of the community, and help them find a different path than the kind of violent path that some of them have headed down here and gotten in serious trouble. So that's what this task force is focused on doing. We've been doing some internal work, getting ready for it, and I think you'll start to see some public discussion about it this month in March. Now that we've
fantastic.
Yeah.
And in addition to that work, there are some trends kind of already apparent in some of these incidents relating to guns, and one of them, as I understand it, is the availability of lost or stolen firearms that's been used. And
yes.
So this is actually a place where the city of Burlington was far ahead of its time in trying to look at safe ordinances that would require safe storage of these firearms and potentially reporting lost or stolen firearms. And that's something you're pushing the legislature for in Montpelier as well as us, and that we've endorsed your plan. How do you think that's being received so far?
Yeah, so the background on this issue is interesting as well, right? So back in 2012, the end of 2012, the year I came into office, we had this historically awful shooting in massacre in Newtown, Connecticut, where over 20 kindergartners, first graders, teachers lost their lives. And in the wake of that, we had really, there had been many years since there had been any serious discussion of changing our gun violence laws here in Vermont. And I joined up with some other mayors and said, we really got, like, this can't continue. This is, no other country in the world lives this way. We need to do something about this. And that carried into town meeting day on 2014. We took a series of proposals to the voters that voters endorsed overwhelmingly. And looking back on that, Austin, in some ways we came up with that list. We saw these as initiatives that would be meaningful, and we also saw them as practical things that you could do at the local level, since it seemed like the state and the federal government were doing nothing at the time. It is striking when you look at this list now how, had the legislature allowed us to act, had they given us the ability to prohibit guns in bars, had they given us the ability to require guns in Burlington to be secured, stored safely, it really could have impacted this recent spike in crime. Yes, 6 of the 17 guns that have been recovered at crime scenes or related to crimes that the BPD has found, the last 17, 6 of them were stolen guns. Fully a quarter of these gun violence incidents that we've seen over the last couple of years have been late night bar-related violence. Had it been illegal to bring a gun into the bar, you may well, I think it's likely that we would have had fewer of these incidents, less of this violence. So what I was just down yesterday, in fact, and part of an event with Gun Sense Vermont with Senator Baruth and others, and I do think the safe storage provision in particular is has some momentum there. That every speaker who got up yesterday, I think, weighed in on that. Safe storage has been shown to reduce violence among kids by as much as 70% if you have a gun properly stored in a home. It can have a very positive impact on suicide prevention, and every other New England state already does this. So I have a feeling that at least that provision is finally going to become law this year.
Yeah, and as background for those viewing at home who are not familiar, Vermont's what's called a Dillon Rule state. So any authority that a municipality has has to be granted to them by Montpelier. So even though Burlington voters had advanced a piece of policy to create a safe storage, that was held up in Montpelier, and I think it's it's a unique blind spot in Vermont. I think it's part of our kind of rural heritage that folks are very proud of their Second Amendment rights and reluctant to have any kind of action on firearms. However, this is a very narrow, common sense item that I think folks really should come around to, and I think I have some optimism that this legislative session we can have those sensible discussions. Anything else on that?
Well, just to add to, I mean, it is, you're right. I think we have, what's striking to me is some of the other states that have the prohibition of guns in bars, which, like you said, just strikes me as a base. We know that guns and alcohol can be a dangerous, volatile mix. We've seen terrible incidents in Burlington. We had a bystander get shot, and a woman almost lost her life outside of Nexers a few years ago. There are other states with a pretty rural character that have a strong traditions of hunting and gun ownership for subsistence reasons that have this kind of provision in place. Alaska, South Dakota, Kentucky are all states that prohibit guns in bars currently. I know at least one Burlington legislator has put forward such a bill. It would be great if that got added to what moves this year.
And folks make bad enough decisions with cell phones when under the influence of alcohol. I think it's pretty reasonable to try to keep the guns out of their hands while they're under that influence. Let's just talk a little bit about improving downtown climate. I know you've got some proposals around that. Talk to me about crisis advocacy intervention programs.
Yeah. So I gotta say, Austin, now that if we can maintain this much lower level of gun violence, I think this really then becomes really what needs to be a top focus in 2023. Too often last summer, we were not consistently able to maintain the welcoming, positive space where everyone feels safe and desired to be there. That has defined downtown Burlington for decades and has made it such a vibrant, beloved downtown. And we need a different year in 2023. And there are a number of reasons why I'm hopeful it will be different. One is, and I think a really important reason that doesn't get a lot of discussion is that essentially the whole court system shut down for more than 2 years, and that is over. The long emergency order that really was, just sort of took away our accountability system to a large degree for a long time. That is now operating again. Hopefully that will help. Another positive trend is around these alternative resources you just mentioned. So we have gone from just a couple years ago, we had essentially one person with a social work background working for the police department. We now have increased, there are 6 positions there, and they're almost all filled at this point. We have also added community service officers. These are a way to expand our public safety presence through individuals that are not armed. They're not police officers, but they do carry radios, and they are uniformed, and they help project a broader sense of public safety in the downtown. Another real change since last summer is we now have the Elmwood Avenue shelter is up and operating, and this is a public health approach to try to help people who are unhoused and help them access resources that, really a focused effort to help people access resources in a new way, get them help. Hopefully all these new resources, the idea is that all these new resources will have a positive impact on the downtown. At the same time that we are also rebuilding the police department, which is also, of course, an important part of the public safety presence that we want to be able to maintain and project in the downtown. We have some momentum there as well. Chief Murad and I brought forward to the council as part of the budget process last year a 3-year rebuilding plan. The council approved that unanimously, and it does have millions of dollars in it for this multi-year plan to rebuild the department. And we're on track now that it's been a little more than 6 months since that, and we're on track with 6 officers off at the academy right now. That's our biggest recruitment class we've had in years. We actually had 1 officer who left us in the period after the reduction in authorized headcount. He has actually come back to us. So there's some encouraging signs, and that's even before we started a nationwide marketing effort, which was also funded out of that plan. And we're in the process of finalizing a firm to work with us there. So I think there's some reasons to be hopeful that that's heading in the right direction. As long as and maybe this is something I know we want to get to before we run out of time here, is the one trend cutting against all that is if this community control board conversation.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I want to get back to recruitment, and for those who haven't seen it, it's a very thorough 16-point proposal. Multiple pages that can be available, I believe, on the city's website. It's in the one of the latest, or many of the latest, Lake Champlain Chamber advocacy updates that are available on our website as well. But number 14 on this list is particularly timely as we head into town meeting week, and that is urging folks to reject the ballot initiative that seeks to create the community control board. And to set the stage for this. This is, from an organization of professionals, working in this region. I think we all can acknowledge that professionals should be regulated by professionals. You wouldn't ask, a medical examining board to have anyone with experience in the state hospital system to need not apply. However, that's exactly what this community control board, by its language, is set up to do, is it not?
I think this is a very problematic proposal. I understand and agree with the idea that we need police accountability. This is not the way to this is not the way to achieve police accountability. This proposal, which is the kind of some of the backers of it have acknowledged is unprecedented in the country, really it takes sort of concepts from really big cities that have had decades of police corruption issues and serious police brutality problems, LA, Chicago, Oakland. Those are really the only boards in the country that have these kind of disciplinary authorities. It takes those concepts and then what is unprecedented is sort of innovative with this proposal. It strips away all of the commitments really to procedural justice that officers want to have. To your point, they want to know they're going to be judged fairly if they are being brought before the board to determine if they've been involved in some kind of incident where discipline is being considered. All professionals will want to know they're going to be treated fairly, and really all the protections, or many of the protections at least, that are in other systems have been, and in our current system, are stripped away. Some examples of that are there's no appeal right within the system, which is a kind of bedrock tenet of the way city employees are treated. There's no ability to grieve decisions that up to 2 weeks of suspension that that might be imposed. And very importantly, yes, the people who would be sitting on this board, they are prohibited from serving on the board if they have had law enforcement background currently or ever in their careers. There are, other systems require people to be judges or attorneys or have HR backgrounds or, some clear professional background training that would be on point with disciplining officers, and there are none of those safeguards that are a part of this, and there's no political accountability in this as well. This board would be appointed by nonprofits that are, through a kind of complicated process, selected by the city. If the board was making problematic decisions, if the board was spending millions of dollars, there's nothing in the charter change that clearly gives the city council or the mayor the ability to control that or to make a change on that board.
It almost creates a parallel government that's set up by nonprofits.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to characterize it. It is
with no accountability to taxpayers or voters at all in the city.
Remarkably, there's nothing else like it in the city charter. I don't think this is the way to go. I think the way to achieve police accountability is to continue down the path that we've already invested a great deal in. Since that document, since that pivotal time in American policing that I was mentioning before, since 2016, we have been repeatedly and steadily investing in strengthening the Burlington Police Commission, in clarifying, refining what their responsibilities and mandate is, and giving them additional resources. At this point, every citizen complaint is reviewed by the Police Commission. Every use of force incident is reviewed by the Police Commission. There's not a ton of awareness about this because these are confidential processes, and it's which is required by policy. But there's a lot of review that's going on. I have to be clear. I have not always agreed with the way the Police Commission has approached these new responsibilities. We've had some differences here, but I see that as part of a process of refining the system, figuring out and making it work and investing in it, and we should continue that instead of throwing that out and starting from scratch with something else.
Well, it's always difficult to ask folks to embrace complexity, and I think because this is such something that touches all of our lives that we all have exposure to. It's easy to kind of look at it and think that the solutions are easy, and the fact is you got to embrace complexity and really lean into it. And there's a lot of very difficult things at play here. There's existing laws, there's case law, there's the collective bargaining agreement with the police force. All of these things that have to be navigated. So it's no easy task. It sounds like you have a great deal of agreement with you that's kind of across the political spectrum that this isn't the solution.
I'm hopeful. That's right. I mean, certainly it is not just the chamber that has come out and stood with me and taken a stand on this issue. It's other organizations that work directly with the police department every day and know how important the police department are to public safety in this community. So the hospital, which has had all sorts of challenges over the last couple of years with some real violence in their emergency room, they are against this control board. The Howard Center came and voiced their concern. We've had many past city councilors and past police commissioners have joined the coalition. I am hopeful that people understand that this is problematic. Really, to your point, Austin, complicated things I think are hard to do through ballot initiatives. A majority of the council came out and opposed the passage of question number 7 and said, in the wake of a defeat, there will be further work to keep looking at this issue, keep working on the details, deal with all that complexity, and look for ways that our current system can be made still better. I think that's clearly the better route to go. I hope Burlingtonians are hearing this call, and if they do, I think it will actually really be a shot in the arm. It will give a further boost to our efforts to rebuild the department and get back to the levels of public safety that we've long enjoyed here in Burlington.
So there's a lot of components to this. As I said, there's 16 points. One thing that kind of jumped out at me as particularly innovative was your call to create non-residential alternative paths to becoming a police officer. Currently, right now, if you want to become a member and serve your local community, you have to leave your community for quite some time, which isn't really feasible for a lot of folks. So I guess elaborate a little bit more on that for me.
Yeah, thanks. This is a really important issue and one that there's been sort of discussion of on one level or another for a while, but I think this is now an idea whose time has really come. The policing profession is really challenged right now. It's not just in Burlington that the police department is struggling to maintain its numbers. This is really a statewide phenomenon and really a national phenomenon. I went to a big mayor's conference at the beginning of January, and one of the best attended panels was about exactly this issue. How do we ensure that there is a police there's a group of individuals that want to play this essential role going into the future. Some of the historic areas where we've recruited police officers from the past are a lot of people used to come out of the military and go into policing. Less and less. That's becoming a less productive. There's less people are coming out of that background that want to go into policing, and I think we've also been sort of grappling with we don't. While we have many great officers who have a military background, we are also looking for something different in officers. We want people who have a kind of guardian mentality, not necessarily kind of the warrior mentality that a lot of people who come through the military, that's what they're doing while they're in the military. So we do need to recruit from different populations. I think we have a real opportunity to do that here in Burlington. In particular, we have large numbers of refugee groups that have moved here, and that in general, many of them very much value how law enforcement is an important part of, it works here in a way that in many other parts of the world it is not effective. But we make it very hard for, like you just said, that many people just are not in position to go down to rural Vermont, Pittsfield, Vermont, separate from their families for 3 months to pursue the certification you need. It would be great if we had some kind of Chittenden County facility where people could go to night classes, where they could go on weekends and maybe over a longer period of time get the required accreditation.
Certainly not unique to policing. I mean, I think as a chamber we see it in many places. Most of our professional regulation and training is really just kind of built around the idea of an abundance of workforce.
Yeah.
It was built by one of the largest generations in American history, the boomers, and now we're just seeing less and less people present for every kind of job.
That's an interesting observation, yeah.
I think we're in a pivotal point in our history where we need to kind of understand if we should start pulling back or having just less restrictive barriers to entry for different professions, or finding similar types of experiences that can, be pushed into that profession. So very unique, commend you for looking at such into the weeds, the complexity of the issue, getting to a really root cause. And I think that's a fantastic option right there. I think we're running close on out of time. Any parting thoughts in the last 30 seconds or?
I think I'll just close by saying again, Austin, I appreciate the partnership with the Chamber, the support for this plan. I hope all Burlingtonians who are watching this will understand that there really is a very important decision in their hands with ballot question number 7. We have, again, I think there is some real momentum right now addressing some of the challenges that we saw in the last couple of years. We either are going to put some more wind in the sails of that momentum towards rebuilding the department, towards continuing to implement the 21st century policing reforms that have been such a big focus for years, or we are going to undercut the progress of the last year and a half if this goes through. So if people have more questions about this, there's quite a bit more information about the ballot item on the website. There's on the city's website, as well as there's a campaign website out there, and would encourage people to go, and if they still do have questions on this, get more informed before they make this important vote.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I think that's our time for today. I'm Austin Davis, Director of Government Affairs for Lake Champlain Chamber, and see you next time, folks.